What happens when a man who believes he's a god meets the one person who can actually save him, at the very moment he despises her the most? Today's story isn't about medicine. It's about power, humility, and that terrifying moment when life forces your hand and asks, "Who are you?" when your title can no longer protect you. The air in operating room 3 of St. Jude's Hospital was colder than usual. Or maybe it was just the presence of Dr. Alistair Finch. A renowned cardiothoracic surgeon, Finch moved through the sterile environment not like a doctor, but like a maestro before his orchestra. Every scalpel, every clamp, every glance from the residents and nurses orbited his will. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was a tense, heavy silence, the kind that forms around a predator. His movements were precise, economical, and his reputation was legendary. He saved lives others considered lost, but he never let anyone forget it. That day's procedure was a complex aortic valve replacement. Hours of meticulous work unfolded, with the steady, rhythmic sound of the heart monitor filling the space. At his side was the head nurse for the surgery, Clara Evans. A woman in her 50s, whose eyes had seen more suffering and relief than most people would in 10 lifetimes. With 30 years of experience, Clara was the silent rock of that team. She anticipated Finch's needs before he even verbalized them. She was the calm in the center of the hurricane he created. But to Dr. Finch, Clara's competence was invisible. To him, she was just another pair of hands, a functional instrument in his theater of genius. "DeBakey forceps," he commanded, his voice muffled by his mask, without looking up from the patient's open chest. Clara's hand was already there, placing the instrument in his palm with practiced fluidity. He worked for another minute, sweat shining on his brow, focused. Then he stopped. A dead silence fell over the room. "I asked for the DeBakey forceps," he repeated, his voice now sharp as broken glass. Clara frowned beneath her mask. "Doctor, that's what I gave you." Finch raised his head slowly, his blue eyes flashing over his mask with an icy fury. He glanced at the forceps in his hand, then at her. "This is the 1 5mm version. I need the 2.0. Do you think I'm playing games here, nurse? Do you think this is an arts and crafts class?" The humiliation was instant and public. The younger residents flinched. The anesthesiologist looked away, pretending to be absorbed in his monitors. Clara kept her voice steady and low. "My apologies, doctor. You didn't specify the size. Here is the 2.0. She handed it over with the same composure, but Finch wasn't finished. He threw the first pair of forceps onto the metal tray with a clang that echoed in the silent room. "I shouldn't have to specify. You should know. 30 years in this hospital and you still need me to spell it out for you. Or is age finally taking its toll, Evans? Perhaps it's time to consider a more administrative role." The words hung in the air, poisonous and cruel. It wasn't about the forceps. It was never about the forceps. It was about power. It was about reasserting his dominance, reminding everyone in the room that he was the sun and they were mere planets. Clara didn't respond. She just took a step back, her face an impassive mask of professionalism. But inside, an ember of indignation, long dormant, began to glow. She had endured his arrogance for years, always for the sake of the patient, always putting the well-being of the person on the table above her own pride. But there was a limit, and Dr. Alistair Finch was dancing dangerously close to it. The surgery ended successfully, as always. Finch left the room, ripping off his gloves and mask, accepting the muttered praise from the residents like a king accepting tribute. He didn't glance at Clara once. To him, she had already ceased to exist. As the team cleaned the room, a young resident, Dr. Chen, approached Clara timidly. "I'm sorry about what he said, Clara. That was uncalled for." Clara gave a small, tired nod. "The patient is stable, Dr. Chen. That's what matters." But as she spoke the words, she knew something had shifted. That day's humiliation would not be forgotten. She didn't know how or when, but she felt it deep in her bones. The universe has a strange, ironic way of settling the score. Dr. Finch, at the peak of his mountain of arrogance, had no idea he was about to take a fall. And he had no idea that the only hand reaching for him at the bottom of the abyss would be the very one he had just so disdainfully bitten. Dr. Alistair Finch believed rest was for the weak, but he made one concession: nature. Every weekend, he got away from the city, the hospital, the people he saw as cogs in his machine. He went to the mountains, not to relax, but to conquer. He hiked difficult trails, summited steep peaks, pushing his body to its limit. It was another way of proving his superiority to himself, this time over the wilderness itself. That Saturday, less than 48 hours after the surgery, he drove his luxury BMW to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. The air was crisp, the sky a deep blue. He was alone, just how he liked it. No one to slow him down, no useless chatter, just him and the challenge. He chose a trail marked difficult, a winding route that climbed through rocky and treacherous terrain. As he climbed, his thoughts were of triumph. Thursday's surgery, the way he'd put the nurse in her place. He didn't see it as cruelty, but as the necessary maintenance of order. Excellence, he believed, demanded a ruthless standard. Weakness, hesitation, error, all of it needed to be excised. And he was the surgeon, both inside and outside the operating room. He reached a particularly steep section of the trail. The path was narrow, with a sharp drop-off on one side. A recent rain had left the rocks slick and slippery. But Finch didn't hesitate. Caution was for other people. He leaped from one rock to another, and it was in that moment that the universe decided to collect its debt. His foot slipped on the wet stone. For a terrifying moment he was suspended in the air, his arms flailing wildly. He fell. It wasn't a long drop, maybe only a few feet, but he landed with a sickening cracking sound. A sharp, blinding pain exploded in his left leg. He looked down and saw the bone protruding from the skin at a grotesque angle. A compound fracture. Panic, an emotion he barely knew, began to rise in his throat. But the worst was yet to come. During the fall, his body had slammed against an old pine branch jutting out from the ground. A piece of wood, sharp as a spear, had pierced his upper thigh, just inches from his femoral artery. Blood began to gush, dark and hot, staining the leg of his expensive hiking pants at an alarming rate. Dr. Alistair Finch, the man who commanded life and death with his steady hands, now lay on the ground, broken, bleeding, and utterly alone. He tried to reach the phone in his pocket. The screen was cracked, and there was no signal. A cry of frustration and fear escaped his lips. He knew exactly what was happening to his body. He knew about hypovolemic shock. He knew how much time he had, and it wasn't much. The irony was crushing. He, who spent his days mending hearts, was now watching his own life drain away through a hole in his leg, in the middle of nowhere. His arrogance dissolved, replaced by a primal, childlike fear. He cried out for help, his voice sounding weak and pathetic against the silent vastness of the forest. As darkness began to creep in at the edges of his vision, he saw movement on the trail above. A figure. Someone was coming. A wave of relief washed over him. Help. Finally. The figure carefully navigated the steep terrain, moving with a confidence and calm that contrasted with his own desperate panic. As the person drew closer, Finch's eyes widened in disbelief. The fog of pain and fear cleared for a second, replaced by pure, absolute shock. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a park ranger. It was Clara Evans. For an instant, time froze. The two stared at each other. The broken surgeon on the ground and the nurse he had humiliated standing over him. For Finch, it was a moment of terrifying surrealism. His brain refused to process it. Of all the people in the world, why her? Was this a nightmare? A hallucination brought on by blood loss? Clara's expression was unreadable. There was no triumph in her eyes, no glint of, "I told you so." There was only assessment. The same calm, professional assessment she used beside an operating table. She had a Saturday routine. While Finch used the mountains to feel superior, Clara used them to feel small, to remember the beauty, the silence, and a world much larger than the sterile walls of a hospital. It was her way of reconnecting, of healing the small wounds that jobs like hers inflict on the soul. The trail Finch considered a conquest, to her, was a sanctuary. She knelt beside him, her hiking pack dropping softly to the dirt. Her eyes scanned the scene, taking in every detail with stunning efficiency. The compound fracture, the pallor of his skin, the cold sweat on his brow, and most importantly, the pulsating bleed from his thigh. "Dr. Finch," she said, and her voice was impossibly calm. "Don't move." Finch's mind was at war with itself. The medical part of his brain screamed orders. Tourniquet, direct pressure, elevate the leg. But the proud part of his brain was in agony. To be saved by her, it was a humiliation worse than death itself. "Evans," he managed to whisper, his voice hoarse. "What are you—" "I'm hiking," she replied simply, already opening her pack. She didn't pull out a sophisticated first aid kit. She pulled out a water bottle, her own windbreaker, and a roll of duct tape she used for emergency gear repairs. "I need to stop this bleeding, doctor. You know that." He knew. With every beat of his heart, more of his life was spilling onto the cold earth. Fear finally conquered pride. The femoral— "I think it's hit," he gasped. Clara's eyes met his. "I know." And then, something incredible happened. The woman Finch saw as little more than a piece of furniture in the operating room transformed. She moved with a speed and purpose that stunned him. She tore a sleeve from her jacket, wrapped it tightly a few inches above the wound. She grabbed a sturdy branch from the ground, slipped it into the knot, and began to twist, creating a makeshift tourniquet. The pain was excruciating, and Finch screamed, but Clara didn't hesitate. "I know it hurts," she said, her voice still firm but with a hint of compassion. "I need you to take a deep breath. Look at me, Alistair." She called him by his first name. The sound shocked him more than the pain. No one called him Alistair at the hospital. He was Dr. Finch. "Sir, God. You were a combat medic, weren't you?" The question escaped his lips, a fragment of hospital gossip he'd once heard and dismissed as irrelevant. Clara tightened the tourniquet one last time and secured it with the duct tape. The gush of blood slowed to a trickle. She looked at him, her eyes serious. "Afghanistan, 2 tours. I've seen worse than this." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. The nurse he'd treated like an incompetent servant had experienced saving lives under enemy fire, in conditions that would make his state-of-the-art operating room look like a luxury hotel. He dealt with wounds in a controlled environment. She dealt with them in the midst of chaos, dust, and death, with nothing but what she carried in her pack. The power dynamic hadn't just been inverted, it had been completely annihilated and rebuilt from scratch. Here, on the mountainside, his Harvard degree, his published papers, his millions in the bank. All of it was worthless. His knowledge was theoretical. Hers was practical, forged in fire. She was now working on the fracture, using more branches and the rest of her jacket to create a makeshift splint, immobilizing the broken bone. Her movements were sure, efficient, without a hint of hesitation. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't seek his approval. She was in command. "My phone has no signal," he said, his voice faint. "Neither does mine down here," she replied, not looking up. "But there's a ridge about 1 kilometer from here. The signal is good there. I'm going to splint you, make sure the bleeding is controlled, and then I'll climb up to call for help." She paused and looked directly at him. "You're going to get cold. Shock is setting in. I'm going to cover you with my emergency blanket. You need to stay awake, doctor. Talk to me." He, the great Dr. Alistair Finch, was taking orders from Nurse Evans, and he was obeying. Because his life depended on it. The arrogance had completely evaporated, leaving behind a scared, broken, and deeply, profoundly ashamed man. He looked at her face, focused and calm, and the image from the operating room flashed in his mind. The cruel words he'd said, the way he'd dismissed her. And now, she was using her own clothes to keep him warm, her own skills to keep him alive. She could have left him there. She could have walked right by. She could have offered a sarcastic smile and said, "Perhaps it's time to consider a more administrative role, doctor," and walked away. No one would have ever known, but she didn't. And that single truth, that demonstration of grace in the face of his own cruelty, was the deepest wound of all. It wasn't a wound in the body, but in the soul. And he knew, even as his consciousness began to flicker, that this would be the scar he would carry forever. The rescue team arrived an hour later. An eternity for Finch, who fought against unconsciousness, guided by Clara's calm voice. She had run to the ridge, made the emergency call, and returned to stay by his side, monitoring his vitals with the touch of her fingers on his pulse. The helicopter ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and morphine. But he was conscious enough to see Clara speaking with the paramedics, giving a concise and precise report of his injuries and the interventions she had performed. They listened to her with a respect that Finch rarely granted anyone. 2 days later, he woke up in a private room in the very hospital where he was king. His leg was in a cast and suspended, his thigh covered by a clean dressing. Monitors beeped softly beside him. Sunlight streamed through the window, but he felt as if he were in the deepest darkness. The door opened softly. It was Clara. She wasn't in her nurse's scrubs, but in civilian clothes. She was carrying a small vase of flowers. Finch felt a wave of shame so intense it nearly suffocated him. He couldn't look at her. She placed the flowers on the bedside table and stood in silence for a moment. The only sound was the beeping of the heart monitor, the same sound that filled his operating rooms. But now it seemed to measure the pulse of his own humiliation. "The doctor said you'll make a full recovery," she said finally, her voice soft. "The splint I made kept the bone stable, and the tourniquet. They said it saved your life. You would have bled out in another 10 minutes. He finally forced his eyes to meet hers. They were filled with an emotion he couldn't decipher. It wasn't pity. It wasn't anger. "Clara," he began, his voice breaking. The words wouldn't come. "I'm sorry," felt so small, so pathetic, so insultingly inadequate for the enormity of what had happened. She seemed to understand. She pulled a chair to his bedside. "My first week in Afghanistan," she began, and the change of subject surprised him. A sergeant, a big, tough guy, was brought in with shrapnel in his chest. I froze, just for a second, and my commanding officer yelled at me in front of everyone. Told me I didn't have what it takes, that I should go home and knit. Finch listened, mesmerized. "I felt about an inch tall," she continued. "I hated that man. But the next day, he put me on the worst injury that came into the tent. He stood behind me, watching every move. He didn't help me. He forced me to be better. 2 weeks later, he was wounded, and I was the one who saved him." She glanced out the window. "I never thanked him for yelling at me, and he never apologized. We didn't have to. We understood. What we do, this line of work, it's not for the faint of heart. And sometimes the pressure breaks us." She turned back to him. "But what defines us isn't whether we break, Alistair. It's how we put ourselves back together afterward." Tears welled up in Alistair Finch's eyes. Not from pain, but from a raw, overwhelming emotion. It was gratitude. It was regret. It was humility. "You could have left me there," he whispered, "after what I said. The way I treated you. I would have deserved it." Clara offered a small smile, the first he'd ever really seen on her face. "Nobody deserves to die on a mountain, doctor. Besides," she added with a twinkle in her eye, Letting you die would have been too much paperwork. A weak, choked laugh escaped Finch's lips. "Clara," he said, looking directly at her now, the sincerity in his voice raw and undeniable. "Thank you. And I am sorry. For the forceps. For everything. I was wrong." She just nodded. The silent acceptance was more powerful than any speech. She stood up to leave. "Clara, wait," he said. "Why do you do it? After everything you've seen, Afghanistan, 30 years in this place, why?" She stopped at the door and looked back at the man who was living proof of her philosophy. "Because someone has to," she said simply, "and because I believe that even the hardest hearts can be mended." She left, closing the door softly behind her, leaving Alistair Finch alone with his thoughts and with the hardest lesson of his life. Dr. Alistair Finch returned to the operating room 3 months later. He was still a brilliant surgeon, but he was a different man. The team noticed immediately. He asked for instruments with "please." He said "thank you" at the end of procedures, and most remarkably, he listened. He asked nurses for their opinions, valued their input, and treated them as the vital partners they had always been. His first surgery back was a complex procedure, and his head nurse was Clara Evans. At the end, once the patient's chest was closed and the monitors were stable, he turned to her, in front of the entire team, and said, "Excellent work today, Clara. Thank you." The story became a quiet legend in the halls of St. Jude's. The story of how the hospital's most arrogant surgeon was saved by the nurse he disrespected the most. Let this be a lesson. A person's true worth isn't in their title, their degree, or the authority they wield over others. It's in their character when no one is watching. It's in their grace under pressure. For true authority isn't measured by the height of your pedestal, but by your ability to kneel to help someone who has fallen. And sometimes the person you look down on is the only one with the strength to carry you out of the darkness. The story of Dr. Finch and Nurse Clara shows us that humility is the hardest, but also the most powerful lesson. Now we want to hear from you. Comment below. Who was the Clara in your life? That quiet, competent person who showed incredible strength when no one expected it, or who taught you a great lesson about respect. Let's fill the comments with tributes to these silent heroes. Share this video. If you believe the world needs more integrity and less arrogance, share this story. You never know who might need to hear this message of respect and redemption today. And finally, if you love stories where justice prevails and character is true strength, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We have many more emotional journeys, full of powerful twists and lessons, waiting for you. Your subscription helps us keep bringing you these narratives. We'll see you in the next story.